As a young man, he had believed in the biblical story of creation. But as the beagle slowly made its way back to England, Darwin began to reflect on what he had seen.
And this was where a whole lot of Darwin's specimens ended up, along with those of a mass of other enthusiastic collectors who scoured the globe, shooting all sorts of exotic creatures and bringing them back. In fact, museums had to construct whole new buildings to house the hundreds of thousands of specimens. Now, look in here. This straw has got some wonderful birds, collected by another enthusiastic naturalist called Alfred Russel Wallace. Look at this extraordinary bird of paradise. Look at that tail. Wallace had interesting ideas of his own, and his research was to have a profound effect on Darwin later on. Now, over here are some specimens collected actually on Darwin's trip on the Galapagos Islands. And you can see they're not terribly exciting looking. In fact, they're rather boring. And he was not very interested, and he just shot a lot and shoved them into one bag and didn't even label them properly. But they turned out to be some of the most valuable pieces of evidence for his growing ideas on evolution.
The birds were all finches. They all looked pretty similar, but they came from different parts of the islands, and there were significant differences between them.
Darwin handed over all his specimens to various experts for examination, and he took the birds to the bird expert, a chap called John Gould. And it was Gould who said that these boring-looking birds were really exciting. And the extraordinary thing was the variation between them. Look at the beaks particularly. You see, some of them are tiny and very pointed, some are much chunkier. In fact, if I take this chap here and put him beside that one, just look at the difference. It's absolutely colossal.
Darwin wondered whether there could be a link between the way the beaks had developed and the habitat the birds lived in.
Imagine that on one of the Galapagos Islands there's loads of grass with insects in it. Then any finches with small beaks are going to be favoured because they'll be good at teasing out those insects. And therefore those finches will have more babies, and their babies will tend to have smaller beaks, until after many, many generations you might get finches like this with absolutely minute beaks. Whereas on another island, where there are no insects but lots of seeds, then finches with bigger beaks will be more successful. And they'll have more babies, and the babies will have bigger beaks, and so on, until you might get finches like this with great big seed-cracking beaks. And Darwin thought maybe that was how separate species actually developed.